Good evening and welcome. I'm Krish Iyengar and I lead the school's operations at Sports Village. Sports Village, we are the largest youth sports platform that's trying to make the world a better place by getting 100 million children to play through schools, academies, CSR initiatives, and experiential sports marketing programs. The objective of the webinar uh, is that with the probability of a third wave of the COVID 19 pandemic and the uncertainty around the timelines for vaccinating children, we need to look at different ways to boost the health and immunity of children. That's the objective of the webinar today. And we are privileged to have some of the most respected people in their field of work to join us on the panel. So let me introduce first Dr. Aruna Jagdish. Dr. Aruna is a pediatrician who has been practicing in Bangalore for the last 27 years. Her area of specialization is well baby clinics that covers the management of a newborn child, managing immunizations, growth and development, as well as nutrition. Her other interests in community pediatric work, which she's been pursuing for over the last 10 years. In the last 2 years, she's been conducting Itsy Bitsy yoga classes at her center, which in her words is new, interesting, and absolutely wonderful. Her special areas of interest include parenting, nutrition in children, mental and health issues. Dr. Aruna, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. KVS Seshasai, who is the CEO of EuroKids and Kangaroo Kids Preschool. Mr. Seshasai is an experienced Chief Executive Officer with a demonstrated history of working in education management and retail industries. An alumni of Birla Institute of Technology, Mesra, Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, and London School of Economics and Political Science. His previous stints include the CEO of ZLearn. He was the business head for Reliance Brands, the Chief Operating Officer of Trent Limited, a Tata Group company. Welcome, Mr. Seshasai.
Thank you, Krish. I'm very happy to be on this webinar.
Pleasure to have you, sir. Ms. Anaga Pandit. Anaga is a master's in clinical psychology from SNDT University. Her keen interest in the field of education encouraged her to do a postgraduate diploma in inclusive education and special education for children with specific learning difficulties and ADHD. While working with children, she also took up a course in play therapy by the Play Therapy Association of India. She has done a certification in cognitive behavior therapy to enhance her skills in this area. She's been working for the last 10 years in this field now. The overall support that she provides children and their parents makes her feel contented. She passionately works to heal lives and scatter happiness. Thank you, Anaga, and welcome to this panel.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We received a message from Ms. Ruchira Ghosh, who was the fourth panelist, that unfortunately she had a personal emergency due to which she would be unable to join us today. So if we could get this panel started, I'd first like to just introduce the background to this. So I'm just sharing a couple of snippets in terms of what we're seeing in the news. Over 20,000 kids below 10 could be vulnerable, says the Times of India, Kochi. Maharashtra preps for a third wave. Dr. Ravi from NIMHANS and Dr. Devi Shetty have also called out the concerns around the third wave, which could, potentially attack children. So, given this background and the objective of this webinar, I'd like to first start with Dr. Aruna on what are her views about these snippets of news that we are seeing in the media today.
Good evening, and thank you all from Sports Village for organizing this webinar. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. Very happy, and a big thanks to the other panelists and all the parents and teachers who are attending this webinar. Now, you rightfully mentioned about the probability of a third wave. There is a prediction, and this all started about a month or a month and a half ago, that there may be a third wave and that their children could be affected more. Now, from my understanding, and I probably will be the voice of the pediatricians in the city, that is our Indian Academy of Pediatrics Bangalore branch, this is what I would like to quote, is that yes, there is a possibility of a third wave. Now, but when we say there is a possibility of a third wave, we don't know the intensity of it. Is it just going to be a ripple, like very often we have seen in other infections earlier, or is it going to be a huge wave where a lot of kids are going to be affected? Honestly, this is a guess. What they have seen in other countries is where the parents or the people, the community, follow the non-pharmacological, detailing properly. Like all of us know, the masking and hand sanitizing and social distancing, where these things have been followed properly, and a lot or a very good number of the population has been vaccinated, they have been able to flatten the curve. So probably it is in our hands if we as parents, we as a member of the society and the government take initiatives, we could also flatten the curve of the third wave. This is very interesting because if it is, it sounds simple, but it needs all of us to be ready for it. Now that is one thing. And so when you say look at it at your family level, what could you do? You could, of course, follow the SMS as we have been saying. Secondly, you could avoid going for social gatherings or to crowded places where the chances of contracting the infection is high. And if age appropriately, kindly get your vaccines done. Parents, grandparents, the staff who work for you, the help who come in, see that everybody is vaccinated so that your children are not exposed to the infection. This is something I think each one of us can do, and each one of us should do. At the community level, and I'm happy it's happened in Bangalore now, they have, I think there's some section 144 which has been put in, which prevents more than 3 to 4 people getting together, because crowding is definitely where infections will come. The third wave has been predicted in India, and especially during our festival times, like August, September, when the Ganpati and the Diwalis and all come up. And thereby we need to be careful from now. About will it affect children? I did see numbers, and the particular place in Maharashtra where they saw a lot of cases was in Ahmednagar. And Ahmednagar is a city in Maharashtra where they've seen a lot of cases of COVID. Now, compared to the first wave, we have seen more cases in the second wave. And if you look at the epidemiological way viruses have acted in the past, whether it was H1N1, dengue, we did see an escalation of cases, and we did see a different age group being affected. So the first wave, it was the senior citizens and the elderly. The second wave was the middle age or the young adults. So with that, understanding that, the third wave could be affecting children. But there is a good news we need to understand, and that is, of the cases or children who get infected, more than 80 to 90% will have very, very mild infection. Let's remember that the infection is going to be very mild. 10% may have a moderate infection, and 1 to 2% may need ICU care.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, Dr. Arna.
Yes.
Yeah. So a couple of points that you made, which is the first thing is the parents, staff, etc., take necessary precautions, get vaccinated, avoid gatherings, etc. I get it. But at this point in time, at least with no vaccines in sight for children, what is it that you would recommend as far as children are concerned?
So basically is avoid getting the infection into your home. Your kids are home, they're not going to school, they're not going to the playgrounds. So I think it becomes our responsibility to try our level best to avoid COVID infection in our homes. And that is by taking care, that is by vaccinating ourselves and by doing, the basic care of SMS, that is your masking and all that. Secondly is pepping up our own immunity, which we'll talk about subsequently. And the vaccination for children is due to come, but at least in India, I don't think it will be here till early next year. In the US, they have been saying that by fall they will start vaccinating children above the age of 5 or 6. So, till we do not get the vaccine, we
Exactly.
have to take care that we do not open our doors for the COVID to come in. And I think if we are cautious, we could definitely do that.
Okay, good to know. Could you take us through a little more in terms of immunity? What can children do to boost their immunity?
Perfect. So I'd like to share a few slides here on this. Anaga, can you please share a few slides? If you look at immunity, immunity is your body's defense mechanism. Basically, it's inbuilt in every one of us. Every child, every adult has an inbuilt immunity. Okay, and what we need to do is to see that this immunity is constantly being boosted in some way or the other. And this is what we will discuss for the next few minutes. The next slide shows, if you look at what contributes to a child's immunity. Anaga, the next slide, please. Yeah. If you look at childhood immunity, there are two things which contribute to it. And the two things are good physical health and good mental health. And again, both of these complement each other. And let's now look at the good physical health part. Anaga will discuss a bit on the mental health. If you look at physical health, there are three components in it. Next slide, Anaga. The 3 pointers here are nutrition, sleep, and physical activity. Nutrition is something which all of us know, but I will give you a few pointers there. Sleep as well as physical activity. If we take care of these three things, we are going to have good physical health, which is going to help boost our child's immunity. Shall I continue a little further, Krish, on nutrition?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
So now if you look at nutrition, now nutrition is a very vast subject. And if we try to get into details, we may need a couple of days or weeks to discuss it. But I'm just going to give you a few pointers which are very important. When you are looking at nutrition, and especially now, when you are worried about things going wrong, very soon, let's see what we can do. One thing is aim at being an optimal family, which means a family who has optimal weight. That means a lean family. Okay, you should make eating right a family mission. When I say it should be a family mission, it is something you need to discuss with your spouse and your children. Everybody should be on the same page. Your children too, to the extent they understand, should understand what they are doing now, why some things they do are wrong, and what if they eat a little better, what will be the advantage. If you actually break it down to science, give them a little bit of information, children are willing to understand and learn. Let's remember that we all have to eat the right carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Understand which is a good carbohydrate for you, which is a good protein and a good fat. Just to give you an example, whole grains are always better. So eating a brown rice or an unpolished rice over white rice, eating a whole wheat bread or a multigrain bread over a white bread, this is what we mean by choosing and eating the right carbohydrates. If this is what is available at home and this is what is bought, this is what our children will eat. Again, today, fats, they say the culprit in our diet is not the oil or fat, but it is the sugar. But let's do everything in moderation. This is my belief, because there was a lot of write-up of the goodness of coconut oil and the goodness of ghee, and some people have been like literally drinking gallons of it. I would say please go slow, because we don't know what we're going to be saying about this after 5 to 6 years. So in moderation is important. Teach your children to eat and vegetables and fruits which give them the phytoproteins. Teach them to have the superfoods like all your nuts and because these things are going to help them to get the vitamins and minerals they want. Start young. Eating right should be from the time a child is very young. Teach your children to eat frequent small meals. rather than eating large meals. And let's not forget the importance of breakfast. Everybody knows breakfast is probably the most important meal in a child. And lastly, for a beginning or for the beginner who's trying to get into good nutrition, just understand what's not good for you, what you should not buy. Suppose you buy a packet of chips or you buy something, look at the ingredients, and you should be able, looking at the ingredients, decide, is this good for me or not. I'll just give you 3 things which you should remember today to avoid, and you will learn many more as you read about it. The 3 things are anything with a trans fat, anything which has fructose, and anything which has a coloring agent. You know, it will be depicted as a green hashtag with a number. You can teach this to your children also. So you give them a packet of Lay's chips or whatever and tell them, now look at the ingredients, and your child will tell you, a 6 or 7-year-old, Mama, this has trans fat, I don't think we should buy it. So learn to be smart when you're shopping, to know what you need to avoid. So you can choose, and it is definitely possible to make good eating habit a mission of the family. And one thing I think we have all learned in the last 14 to 15 months is there is nothing impossible today. We have all got to doing things which seemed impossible. So learning to eat healthy too is going to be easy for each and every one of you. So next is sleep. Next slide, Anaga. So this is just the body shapes. The central is the lean shape where you don't want excessive fat anywhere. Next slide. The next slide just shows you a food plate indicating how your plate should look. You should have a major part with fruits and vegetables and a bigger part of protein, and the carbohydrates is a little less. Let's not forget the water and dairy. Next slide. This is a very important slide which I want every parent to see, is because, you know, when you look at a diet for a child, they will tell, you know, the diet will say give your child 3 portions of a carbohydrate, 3 portions of a protein. But what is the portion size? You should know the portion size for your child. Now, to give you an example, take a 4 to 5-year-old child. Okay, let's do that because probably many of you may be having kids in that age group. When you look at carbohydrate, that is the bread, cereals and pastas, a child needs, here it is mentioned 5 or less. Now today we are looking at less of carbohydrates and more of protein. So I'm going to take it as 4, okay? If you look at 4 servings of a carbohydrate and we are looking at a 4 to 5-year-old, it is half a bread or half a cup of rice. When I say half a bread, suppose you have given your child a sandwich in the morning or 2 slices of bread or toast. You have already given 4 portions of the carbohydrate that he needs. So what does your child need the rest of the day? He needs his fruits and vegetables, he needs his protein. So please understand your portion size. When I give this in my clinic to my patients who complain that their child don't eat well, after they look at this, then they say, doctor, actually my child eats well. So let's not overfeed our children and let's not give them too much food. This is what they actually need. Just remember for your age group, what your child's age group, what should be the portion size. Next slide. Anaga, yeah, now I was talking about sleep. We all know sleep is very important. I'm sure every parent knows that, every parent understands that. And creating a sleep routine in children is very, very important. In fact, as pediatricians, we tell parents that introduce sleep routine, or which we call as sleep hygiene, when your kids are a few months old. You know, when they can start, like maybe after 6 months, when they don't wake up for their night milk, you can start getting kids to get into bed on time. It's very important that your child gets enough sleep. Now over here we have shown how many hours of sleep children need at different age groups. Again here, I think every parent try to see what is the age of your child and just see how much of sleep your child should get. Now this is a range like 10 to 13, 9 to 12. You can take the midpoint as your value if you want, and just see for yourself whether your child is getting enough sleep or not. And I am sure that at least 50% of you will tell us that your child is not sleeping well. This is an extremely common problem in Indian homes, and I think all of us can understand why. See, as a community, Indians, we are very social, and most of our homes, if you agree, is generally very quiet through the day. But towards the evening, after 5 and 6, our homes are very vibrant. That's when everybody comes in home, children are back from school, parents are back from work, the TV is on, some music is on, and there's a lot of activity. So, in the process of all this activity, children don't go to sleep. But we know our children need this sleep. So, winding down as the sun sets and getting our children ready to get into bed is extremely important. A note for parents and fathers, especially who come in late from work. Yes, I know every father wants to give his son or daughter the good night kiss or tell him a story or play with him for a while. But when you do that, you're eating into his sleep routine or into his sleep time. And anyway, your child has to get up in the morning for his routine of school, whether it is classroom or online. So we should not be depriving them of the sleep. You can make your bonding time the morning time. Wake up early as a family, if everybody wakes up early and has an hour or two before the child needs to get on to either an online class or go to school, you can bond with your child, you can get some physical activity with him, you can sit and have a good breakfast with him. So it's only a win-win situation. We need to alter our interactions with our children so that they get sufficient sleep. So I think when you improve the sleep and you improve their food, you are definitely going to improve their immunity, overall immunity. We'll talk about physical activity a little later.
Sure.
Chris, anything else?
No, I think that's a great start, Dr. Adna. So you touched upon both the physical and mental well-being, and the insights on nutrition are extremely valuable, as is sleep, which, as you rightly pointed out, quite often tends to get ignored. Let's make a segue into the other aspect of what you touched upon, which is the mental well-being. And I'd like Anaga to come in here. Anaga, given what children have gone through over the last 14 to 15 months, which has been quite a bit of a change for them, what's your view in terms of mental well-being, and what is it that children need to do in order to, again, boost their immunity?
Yeah. So, like Dr. Aruna was rightly saying, we have to make sure that there's a right balance of good eating and sleep, good rest, as well as physical exercise, which we will talk about a little later. And maybe at that point of time, I might be able to go a little more into details of this slide. But these are generally the happiness chemicals that are responsible for us to feel good. If you feel good, you feel well, your body will respond, right? Even in case of very severe illnesses, terminal illnesses, the doctors have always said that your willpower and how you respond to your mental well-being and how you respond to your emotional needs determines how the drugs are going to work with your body. So if we have the right amount of these happiness chemicals being secreted in the brain, I think we can then build our mental well-being as well as physical well-being to a certain extent to battle whatever we are going in for.
So, just one common thing that I see in the slide, which is interesting, is activity, play, run, exercise. So, is there a theme that is coming through here?
You could say so. But what we probably the point that I want to make through this slide is adequate rest and adequate physical exercise is very, very important for us to feel and for us to secrete these neurotransmitters in our brain.
Right.
As also you will be able to see, hug your family, give a compliment, play with a pet. These are things that make you feel supported. And these are things that will reassure children through these difficult times. If and at all there is a third wave and the children have their friends falling sick, obviously there will be some amount of fear and anxiety, which are emotions to deal with. As adults, we also find it difficult to deal with our anxiety. So obviously our children are going to find it very difficult. And these are the things, if they have the right hormone in the right quantity in their bodies, they will definitely be reassured to battle whatever they are going through. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shall I move on? Is there any other question for me?
No, please go ahead.
All right. So we have to understand the impact of this whole situation that has happened all over the last 1.5 year. Children have been locked up in their houses. Obviously they have not understood why is it safe for them to be locked in. Okay, so management of big emotions, like I was just saying, they might have seen their parents, grandparents, relatives, friends fall sick, so there is a lot of anxiety and fear. I know of a child who was 8 year old who was kind of locked in his own house in the drawing room. The mother was sick of COVID. She was in a room. The father was in another room. Friends were sending in food trays. So the child would give one food tray to the mother, one food tray to the father, and he was left all alone with some gadgets and TV to look after him. So these things must have taken a great toll on the child's mental health, and there was nobody to hug and reassure the child at that point of time. With lockdowns imposed, obviously relatives were not able to travel down. So, management of big emotions is a big problem. Social deprivation. We were not able to connect with people who would have otherwise come and helped us, right, in such situations. Reduced physical activities has also, taken a toll on their health. So the energies are not being drained, or the energies are not being channelized in the ways they would have been had the children been going to playgrounds and schools. And there has been such a big change in our lifestyles. Everything has become lax. I see a lot of children these days whose lives lack a complete rhythm and routine. Sleep times, meal times, waking times, everything has to be adjusted according to whether the domestic helps are available, whether resources are there, whether school is there, or there are holidays, weekends. So a lot of things earlier we used to be more mindful of time, and now the flexibility has its perks, but it has also shown us that there is a downside to it also.
Sure. If we could just pause here for a moment,
Sure, sure.
I would like to bring in Mr. Seshasai's views. Uh, Seshasai, see, last 15 months, children have not had access to the schools, right? And outside of the comfort of their home, a child typically spends anywhere between 6 to 8 hours a day in school. And school is a place where they have the access to the sports infrastructure facilities, which is what Anaga was referring to in terms of the need for physical activity. So I'd like your views in terms of the perspective from the school side, and how is it that you are addressing that?
Thanks, Krish. Yes, it's been, I would say, quite a difficult year or so for us, because when we're looking at the entire experience from a child's perspective, you're right. They come to school, they spend, depending on their age, anywhere from 4 hours to 8 hours inside a school. They get to meet their friends, they get to socialize, they get to play games, participate in cultural activities, and all of these are things which children do naturally, right? And all of a sudden, because of the pandemic, uh, things which they would do naturally, which is come to school, play, interact, and then go home, again play with friends, go for a swim, go for a football class, all of those have come to a complete halt. So when we were looking at how do we cope with this, with this lockdown, with the pandemic, with the fact that children are at home, one of the key things that we realized very, very quickly is that we have to continue the holistic engagement with children that we used to do in the physical school, had to continue in the virtual environment also, right? So parents did reach out to us and say, "Oh, what's going to happen to my child's academics during the lockdown?" So we said, "Don't worry, we will do online classes." Not many parents really talk to us about the physical well-being or the mental well-being of the child, right? We had to kind of reach out and tell and educate parents that it's equally important to for the cognitive development of the child to also make sure that there is physical development and that there is also a focus on the mental well-being of the child. So one of the things we did was to make sure that whatever online timetable that we created, we penciled in adequate amount of time across all age groups, and we penciled in age appropriate time for physical activities. It could be yoga, it could be dance, it could be, just gymnastics. But we made sure that there was structured time where the children in an online group with expert led instruction would go through these kind of activities. Yeah.
Perfect. I just wanted to have a touch upon this in a bit more detail. Right? You spoke about the fact that one, your set of schools has not compromised on the need for all-round development, the
Yes.
need to continue physical activities, extracurricular activities was continued through the digital medium. So could we address this myth that the digital medium cannot provide for the all-round development? That's the first part. And I'll come to the second question after this.
Yeah. So I would say that at the beginning of the pandemic in April last year, there was a lot of skepticism, especially for the younger age groups.
Yeah.
But as time has elapsed, I think parents have also realized that there is really no other alternative at this point in time. I must honestly say that in February this year, we were all poised and anticipating a physical resumption of schools and preschools maybe by June. Yeah. Unfortunately, our hopes were dashed because of the coming of the second wave. And right now, I think we feel that it's very difficult, possibly, or chances of a physical resumption happening this year, this academic year, look very bleak, right? So the question is then, do we stop doing whatever we were doing, or do we continue doing what we were doing? And as we went through the entire last year, we realized that parents started becoming more and more accepting of the digital mode of interaction, right? Children started getting used to it. Yeah, initially children would say, I don't like online classes, I have to sit in front of the screen. But then I realized that, as time went by, children actually started looking forward to the online classes because it gave them an opportunity to see their friends, to interact with their friends, to talk to them, and also to do joint activities with them. Yeah, we've heard of, Model United Nations happening online now. We've talked about annual days happening online now. That some schools and preschools have even attempted to do sports days online, of course, with modified activities. So it is possible to do all of these activities digitally. Yeah. From our own experiences, we know that a lot of people have gone online, gone to YouTube, and seeing videos on how to cook a certain dish and stuff like that. But what we have made sure in our schools and preschools is that I think there is a science to both academics as well as to the physical activities as well as to mental well-being. Yeah, and it requires expertise. That is why we believe that this needed to be guided by expert teachers, by expert counselors, by expert physical counselors who can come and teach children how to do things the right way. Yeah.
So the need for expert guidance is one thing. That not everything can be a self-help video that a child can go through. There could be potential damage or harm that a child could do if it's not provided by an expert. But the other aspect, Seshasa, is also around children feeling the need for doing physical activities with their friends. Now, typically, you would do that in the playground, in the company of your friends. Now, how have you addressed that in the digital medium?
So in the digital medium, like I said, we first factored that into our curriculum by making sure that we have, dedicated time slots for group physical activity. And by physical activity, I don't necessarily mean it is only exercise. It could be dance. It could be, any kind of physical activity. It could be gymnastics. It could be karate. It could be anything. Whatever the children have opted for as part of their overall timetable. We make sure that we pencil it in. We are very religious about it. So for example, some parents turned around and said, what do you mean by saying you will teach children cricket in online mode? Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you saying that someone will come and bowl and someone will bat? So we know that that's not possible, right? But what we realized is that with expert guidance, someone could actually learn basic skills, so that you don't let your fundamental skills for a sport start rusting and go to waste during this time, right? So for instance, if there was a football class, then we'd make sure that the instructor would come on the screen and would teach children certain techniques.
Right.
He'd give them, oh, if this is the amount of space that you have, put one obstacle here, put one obstacle here, try and juggle the ball, right? Now that's a basic skill. And once the pandemic ends, can that dribbling skill be carried forward into the real world? For sure, right? Has the child regressed from a skill perspective? Not to a certain extent, there would be a regression because he doesn't have access to a big football field. But we try our level best to make sure there's no regression of skills and that there is, a little bit of basic practice which keeps continuing all the time.
Perfect. So on this, you made an interesting point in terms of the football field being brought into the home. So one of the themes that has been going around is home as the new playground. Anaga, your thoughts on that in terms of, having worked extensively with kids during this period, how has this concept of home as a new playground come up? And, how has that been accepted by both kids and parents?
I think it's a very great idea. So let me share a few experiences that I have had in the past 1 year.
Right.
Initially, the interest in online classes was very high. And after a point of time, the kids realized that it was only the teacher speaking, the PPTs are being shown, and it again became a dull kind of a thing. Initially, of course, they were excited to explore the features of the software and things like that. And then we had to actually huddle together and then rethink our strategies to get children, attentive, because
Sure.
then their energies are not channelized. I work extensively with children who have ADHD also. So they have these sensory requirements there. The energies have to come out. And if the energies are not coming out, we would have, squirming, fidgety children, thought processes going somewhere outside, watching the birds, hearing the horns. So to bring them in, we have been extensively advocating these little things, get the children to stretch. A 2-minute exercise, raise your right hand, raise your left hand, go down, bend. We have little games during the class, run across the house and bring something from the kitchen. And if the child even happens to bring a bowl or a spoon, we try to make that activity interesting by saying, okay, now this is a magic spoon. So think about what magic quality you can attach to the spoon and tell us about it. So these physically moving activities in the house make it very interesting for children to then become interested in the class and pay attention to whatever we have to say.
Sure.
The other things are musical chair, obstacle courses, different kinds of walking, crawling like on the elbows and stuff like that is what I've been advising parents to do in the house. Skipping is another thing which can be safely done indoors.
Sure.
But yes, physical activities have definitely shown their, potential to bring children back to class and keep them interested.
Sure. And I think you touched upon an interesting thing, which is there's always scope for innovation. Your home may be a smaller playground, but it still is a playground around which you can manage a few things. Back to Seshasai. How are you addressing the fact that kids in different grades would need to do different sets of activities?
Yeah. So Krish, like we spoke about earlier, in the lower grades, like in preschool and in the primary grades, it's about making sure that there is adequate amount of physical activities and adequate amount of fun activities penciled into the curriculum. But as we get into middle school and maybe even to the higher, the secondary school, some of the things that we had to be careful about was to make sure that, children by that time have already chosen some particular sport. Yeah. It could be cricket, it could be football, it could be basketball, it could be, chess, it could be on the extracurricular side, it could be guitar, it could be music. Yeah. But if I were to just talk about the physical portion at this point in time, yeah, I remember an engagement with one of your colleagues, John Gloucester,
Yes.
and the genuine question that came from one of our parents was that my child can't go and play cricket or football or basketball out in the field. So, what is the relevance of trying to learn these things at this point in time? And I remember John saying that please use this time to focus on body strength, to focus on building up your, you know, your muscles. Focus on building up your basic skills. So, for instance, if it is basketball, learn how to dribble, right? And that dribbling can be done. Maybe you don't have an opponent against whom you could dribble, but you could do dribbling drills at home, right? And that's where we would use the expert teacher to come online and make all the children do dribbling drills, right? Similarly, with cricket, some parents turned around and said, hey, you know what? My child doesn't have a cricket bat at home, right? Because he used to get the equipment at school. So our instructor actually told the children to get a stick, and then they used to use the stick and do shadow batting in the digital class. The entire emphasis was on making sure that the skill being imparted to the children continued without any break, and we had to adapt. And of course we had to adapt using expert instructors. We were speaking before the webinar started about how teachers have had to adapt to the online space.
Right.
Even our physical instructors had to adapt to the physical space, to the digital space, by changing the way they teach techniques, by changing the way they teach skills. Yeah. And we had to do all these experiments. Some worked, some didn't work, but eventually we've reached a space where we feel quite confident that there is no regression of skills, that our curriculum is age appropriate, and that by building in a very clear time allocated to physical activity, this physical activity is actually aiding the cognitive development of the children.
Great. So on this, just making the connection back to what Dr. Adna had paused when she made her presentation. Dr. Adna, so coming back to you, I think Anaga spoke about her chart across the 4 verticals had an element of play activity right through. And Seshasai has shared with us all the things that the school is continuing to do in terms of all-round development of the child. So if you were to bring this back to the main theme, which is immunity, could you help us connect the dots in terms of why is physical activity so important for building the immunity of the child?
Definitely, but I just wanted to add something which
Sure, please.
he was telling. Last year when during the first wave, a lot of people, I'm sure I had even discussions with people from your group about if it is not affecting children so much, why shouldn't they go out and play? Because those days we were believing children were super spreaders and we were not wanting kids bringing in the infection in when we had no vaccination for anyone. In one of our webinars, Rahul Dravid was invited. Okay, the captain. I mean, he was probably one of our favorite captains of the Indian cricket team.
Of course.
And so he was asked, what is your take? So he said, today's safety is most important. So if safety is most important, I would not advise any playing outside. But I would use this time, like a cricketer, things that I could not have done. Spend an hour or two on building my muscle strength. Use it for mindfulness activities, which is very important in the game of cricket, which I never had time when I was actually playing on the field. So he came up with such interesting things. He said there is a lot of history of cricket. Why a particular batsman and a bowler was special in his field. So use this time, everybody who's an aspirant to become a cricketer or who wants to play cricket, to learn about cricket, to get your body fit, and to learn mindfulness activities. And I thought that was a very relevant thing which our own Rahul Dravid had spoken then. Now to get back to answer your question, now I'm very impressed with the amount of physical activity you have in your school, Mr. And you have school till high school, I think, children till high school. Now, from what I have seen in many schools in Bangalore, at least the ones I've been interacting with, that up to the, till the 3rd standard, 4th standard, they are able to have or give children some amount of physical activity fairly well in different ways, whether it is through dance or whether it is to actually with physical training or instructors with children online. The challenge is when kids are in the middle school and the high school, and there I think in many schools there's actually almost no physical activity happening with the school, with the children. And the reason being, if they have 5 hours or 6 hours of an online class, probably they're struggling with getting their academics through. Now, over there, this is what I have been wanting to say, that academics is definitely important, but if we don't take care of our general health or our physical health, in which physical activity plays a huge part, we are not going to be helping our children to do well even academically. But to get this across to schools, it will only happen when parents value this. Parents should want the need or should feel the need for this physical activity for their 9th and 10th grader. When the demand comes from the community, from the parent, that I want at least a half an hour of physical activity for my child with as a group activity with a professional through the school, either during school hours or after school hours, I think this is something which we are really facing as a challenge with a lot of children. I'd like to share a few slides here. Anika, you can go back to physical activity to talk about the connection. As next slide, yeah, this is what is generally, this is what is ideal. Children run on the playground, in the open air, fresh air, and doing all these things. But today, as you have rightfully said, the house is the playground. So next slide. Let us look at things that we can do at home with the parents. Okay, next slide. Yes, and next slide. Yeah. Now the third slide is an indicator of children learning some physical activity. With this may be their younger kids, it may be the teacher herself, or it could be somebody who's a trained person. I have always told parents that the way you are enrolling your children for arts and crafts, please do enroll them for some physical activity and let them learn from an expert. There are two advantages here. What is the advantage is when you learn from an expert, you learn the right technique. As children get older, we know they need both aerobic as well as muscle building. So it's only a person who has knowledge in the field of physical activity who can tell us what is going to help us with muscle building, what is going to help us with aerobics. And not only that, there is something called sports injury or physical exercise injury. This happens when we try to learn things on our own, watching YouTube and stuff like that. But if it is done under supervision of an instructor, then you will avoid these injuries. And this is extremely important. So when we talk about physical activity, next slide, what actually happens? We'll come back. You can show this later, Anaga. Now, I think what actually happens when you play, when you run, when you jump, when you play is, as Anaga showed, a lot of these happy hormones are released. And when a child plays, there are three things that happen. Children who play well are going to be hungry, so they learn to eat better. Children who play well and are fairly exhausted because they had enough of physical activity sleep better. And children who play well are happy children. So when a child is happy and he's having, he releases less stress hormones, releases more of the happy hormones, his mental health is good. So if a child has good mental health, if a child has good appetite and eats the right food, which most parents are going to be giving their children, and if a child sleeps well, it is a win-win situation because your child is going to get good immunity. There are a few studies which have shown that when you do physical activity, you breathe better, you breathe deeply. They believe that because of the way you breathe, the viruses and bacteria which enter your lungs get destroyed. Again, there are some studies which have shown that when you play, there is a release of these hormones which make you happy, which I've already said. That again, when you play, there is a release of certain cytokines which help to fight the stress immunities that happen. As you know, immunity is good for you. But what actually happens in some children is there is a fight between the bug and your immunity. And if your immunity is stronger than the bug, sometimes the immunity not only eats up the virus, but it starts damaging your system. This is a negative way it can act. This is avoided, this negative cytokine storm is avoided by doing good physical activity. We do not have enough scientific data to, to actually promote these postulates, but there are studies going on. The third is when you play well, the number of WBCs in your body increase. And this again may help to fight infection. But I would look at it as an overall thing. Child sleeps well, eats better, and child is happy. And these are the three things you need for good immunity. Now,
Perfect.
okay.
If I can just pause there for a moment, I just wanted both Seshasai and Anaga's point of view in terms of what has been the parents' perception or view, right? Seshasai, in all your schools, you've been promoting the all-round development of the child. How have parents taken this? Are they fairly reassured? Are there any examples or experiences that you would like to share?
Yeah, so I think, like I said, early last year, there was some skepticism around transitioning all physical activities from the playground to the home, right? But as parents started to see the impact of continuing these physical activities and these engagements of what is typically called in India as an extracurricular activity into the digital space, then we've seen very high levels of acceptance from parents. And I think predominantly driven by the fact that children are looking forward to these engagements, right?
Sure.
So if children look forward to the engagements, they enjoy these engagements, they see this as one of the most enjoyable parts of their daily online school, then parents also then jump in and say, because obviously parents want to see their children happy and engaged and active, as compared to sad and disengaged and sitting in a corner or looking down and out, right? So that's one of the reasons why we've seen a very high acceptance of this transition to digital, of all the extracurricular activities that we have done in both our schools as well as in our preschools.
Excellent. That's good to know. Anaga, your views as well?
Yeah, so earlier on, when I used to meet parents in the first wave, we were a little inhibited regarding the you know children making a mess of the house and things like that, because we thought probably in 2-3 months we're going to go back to what was once normal.
Sure.
Now, as we've been locked up for months together, I see a marked difference in parents. So I would like to tell all parents viewing this: let your child make mess. If they don't make mess, if they don't explore with materials around them, they are never going to be able to interact well with their surroundings. And these are key skills that they learn. So you might play a music of about 1 minute or 90 seconds and say, okay, let us see how much of the floor can we clear up. And these are ways you can get your children to clear up. I have always maintained right from the beginning, please involve your children in age appropriate household chores. It is an excellent way of getting their energies vented out, getting them involved, giving them some responsibility as well as some amount of physical exercise. So, to tell you my own experience, my 2.5-year-old brings me stacks of folded clothes from one room to the other and helps me stack the clothes in the cupboard. So, it's a great physical activity for her because she runs across the house. She's running. Okay, and there is some perk attached to it, and there's a encouragement and reinforcement that is given. The other child is always ready to mop. So it's a stone that kills many birds: physical activity, engaging with the children, reinforcement, responsibility, bonding with them, and of course a little bit of help in the chores that you're supposed to.
So you figured out a way to make your 2.5-year-old child view the home as a
run around in
playground.
the house. Yes,
Fantastic.
yes. So I think we are very scared. We are always saying a no to our children. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't jump. You're going to hurt yourself. I think if we just learn to say yes, if we can just give them more options of what they can do rather than constantly telling them, don't do this, don't do that, that
Sure.
would make a difference. In the societies, when we are staying one on top of the other apartment societies, there's always this complaint of noise, lot of thumping noise. And I urge society people to just be more accommodative because you're all going through such a difficult time. Allow the children to be children.
Sure.
Let them jump around. Let them make the noise. So
Sure.
I see more acceptance in these terms also. Like the service saying, they are more accepting of children doing yoga, learning dance, skipping, and things like that in the house. We are not now anymore worried about the child will hurt himself or this or that because we have known that अब बहुत हो गया. How much can we, keep our children, make our children behave like adults? We can't. Let
Sure.
them be.
Sounds good. So we have about 5 minutes to go. I thought we could also take a couple of questions that I'm seeing. Let me start with the first one, which is higher secondary level students are too occupied with academics, preparing for competitive exams. How do we convince them and their parents about the importance of physical activity? I'm just throwing this open. Whoever would like to take this?
I could possibly have a first go at it because
Please.
um, I have a child who's going through grade 12. She's preparing for competitive exams, and I know that if she doesn't go do a little bit of a workout for 2-3 days at a stretch, I can see her energy levels start to drop, right? So I always encourage her. If I'm one of those highly driven Indian parents who wants her child to get into the competitive exams and succeed, then I see physical exercise as an enabler, not as a barrier to her doing better. So if parents are saying, "Oh, you should only be studying and not doing any physical activity," then please remember that doing physical activity actually enhances your child to do better at competitive exams, even if it is for 15-20 minutes per day.
I think today, with everybody wanting to give immunity boosters, just saying that exercise is one of the best immunity boosters today, especially even to prevent COVID, may get a lot of parents interested because you put up anything as something good. People are willing to buy and drink and buy and eat. The number of multivitamins, health drinks that are being sold today, which are which are not required, is unbelievable. So if we are able to make them understand the value of this, and definitely children know, when they play out for an hour, it's required for their general health, and it makes them definitely feel better and concentrate better. So it is a tough call. Parents know all this, children know all this, but somehow I don't know whether it's our syllabus or whether it is the way Indian parents think, but there is a huge problem when it comes to, because kids who are even in competitive sport, they parents stop them from doing it in the 9th and 10th grade. This is the sad part about sports
Absolutely.
that we see in India, and it is true, this is genuinely happening, and we have to somehow convince them. But I'm thinking today, let's call it an immunity booster. Probably that will work in the pandemic time.
Yeah, from my point of view, I also feel that competitive exams is equal to a lot of pressure.
Yeah,
And we all know that happiness chemicals help us de stress, and happiness chemicals are released when you exercise.
exercise.
So, physical exercise should be viewed as something that will help your child to unwind and, equip him better to deal with the pressure that he or she has to go through. So I think it is important for them to have a routine and a rhythm. And if they can fit in everything and they can follow that routine, if they are tired, they'll sleep well, they'll rebate off their gadgets for a longer period of time, they'll sleep on time,
Sure.
teenagers.
Just
So
on that point, Anaga, one other question that I'd received prior to the webinar itself was this thing of addiction to gadgets, and hence the good screen time versus bad screen time. Your thoughts on it?
uh, I always tell this to parents, there is no good screen time and bad screen time. There's only a good and bad content that you can view on it, and everything in moderation is required. Of course, we had to tweak our norms about how much screen time a child should be allowed and all of that because everything is now happening online. However, I feel gadget addiction is something that is a very loosely used term. Addiction is when you take the gadget away and the child gets withdrawal symptoms or is very restless. That is what we call addiction. But I think teenagers are more so abusing it or overusing it these days. Again, it brings me to my point of rhythm and routine in life. If we are able to set clear boundaries, set clear expectations, and have everything in moderation. This is school time. I have to remain in front of the screen. I agree. But
Sure.
after school, what is my entertainment related screen time? What is my time on social media? And how much time should I spend on it, given that there are other things that I have to do? I think that should solve our problems
Sure.
as
So,
parents and as children.
sure.
Sorry.
So, Seshasai, what I wanted your view is that typically when there is an activity that is conducted, the child is some distance away from the screen and is not, focused intently on the screen, but typically conducting the activity. What are your thoughts again in terms of this thing about good and bad screen time? And uh, have you had any challenges with parents accepting the fact that there's a certain amount of time on the screen for academics and certain amount of time for physical activity as well?
Yeah, like Anaga talked about good content and bad content.
Right.
We've been looking at screen time as active screen time and passive screen time, right?
Sure.
So if I'm just sitting in front of the TV and watching a cricket match, then I'm not really active. I'm just seeing something, and I'm not really interacting with the content per se, right? Then I would see that as passive screen time. Even if I'm, watching a YouTube video, if I'm doing something on Instagram or something on Facebook, all of these I would consider as passive screen time. But anything in which I'm involved in a digital class, I'm involved in a webinar,
yeah,
my child is spending time talking to people, talking to friends for that matter, right?
Sure.
There are times when children will want to get onto a Zoom call, get together 4 or 5 friends,
right,
work on a school project, yeah, work on some kind of a dissertation. All of these are good times because it gives you the opportunity to do the normal things that children normally do, right? So that's how I would look at it, to say that parents should be seeing this as the more interactive the process, the more good it brings to the child. The more passive it is, then it could be beyond a point, it should be avoided.
Interesting. Thanks. Just one more question. I think, Dr. Aruna, there have been a lot of questions on diet and nutrition. So I'll just pick up one of these, which is I heard zinc is very good for kids. My boys are 5 and 3. What veggies or any supplements can I give them?
See, basically, zinc is available in quite a few leafy vegetables as well as in some of the regular vegetables we eat.
Sure.
So, just giving a mixed diet, seeing that your child eats all types of vegetables, all types of fruits, and has it on a daily basis is what you need to do. So, zinc, all the multivitamins are important. Like, for example, there is a role for B12, there is a role for zinc, there is a role for vitamin D, and everything comes in your diet. We just need to see that they have everything included. And the best way to do that, I have seen, and we've done this with some parents,
Sure.
you get a lot of these vegetable and fruit charts in the market. You just put it up, and what you do is where the name is written, you pick up what is the nutrient that's available in that, like a vitamin D or or E or whatever it is, and you write it down. And then you look at the days of the week and say, today is our day to eat vitamin D. Let your child choose what is going to provide the vitamin D. When you involve children in choosing and planning a meal, they're going to have it because it's a choice they make. Because I can tell you many things which are good, but
Sure.
getting your child to eat is not easy unless he's a part of the decision making. So getting them to decide is what we need to do. Now,
Excellent.
I had
Excellent.
one point here, if we have a minute,
Sure,
is
please.
the one thing that we have seen in this pandemic as pediatricians, probably even as psychologists, there are three concerns we have right now. And one is because kids are at home, parents are busy. I'm sure every parent is working very hard in creating good meals, a breakfast, lunch, dinner. But when a child is at home the whole day and is busy, is not busy when he's not attending any school activity or is not playing, what is he going to do? He's going to want to eat something. And children generally are hungry every 1 or 2 hours. I'm sure every parent with a young child is experiencing this. It may not be possible for parents to create healthy food for every 1 or 2 hours. And that what happens is they eat what is bought from the market, and this is what is causing a little bit of excessive weight and overweight in our children. We are seeing this in children when we're doing online consultation. The second thing is the excessive, probably passive screen time, as Shesha Sai was saying, not where they're not really engaging or learning. This is another concern. The third is the concern of stress and fear. You know, a 5-year-old child, now when we do a consultation with a child, even with COVID, we talk to the 5-year-old. And the 5-year-old has questions for us. Uncle, why did I get COVID? Uncle or auntie, what should I do? Will I give it to my younger sister? What do I need to do? So answer their questions, speak to them and answer their questions. So at the end of this pandemic, what is our concern as pediatricians is, one, little bit of issues with overweight and obesity. Two is some amount of psychological help that they're going to need, everybody, parents and children. And three is a lot of vaccinations, the regular vaccinations have not been done today because parents are scared to come to healthcare centers. And so we are a little worried that there may be an outbreak of vaccine preventable diseases which may rise a little bit. So we need to focus on these things, and I would request parents to complete their children's routine vaccinations without a fail. And when the COVID vaccine comes for our children, please go ahead and give it to them.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Aruna. I think we're over time. So
Okay.
if I was to quickly summarize, all the points that have been made, Dr. Aruna first spoke about the things that we can control, things within our control in terms of immunity, which is nutrition, sleep, and physical activity. Anaga spoke about the mental well-being of a child, and a common theme across was physical activity, along with the right level of emotional support coming from parents. Seshasai spoke about the fact that as educators, there's a clear need to continue with the need for all-round development of the child, and hence it's not just academics, but also sports, music, and all the other things that go with it. So that, in summary, are the set of inputs for educators, parents, and children. Uh, let's take the best of the learnings from our, eminent panelists and make sure that our children are safe. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Aruna, Seshasai, and Anaga.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you all
Pleasure.
for joining the webinar as well. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.